12-year-old Miles lives with his mum Tracy in York.
He was a very good baby, actually. I was up and about with him within 2 weeks. He just won the charms of everybody that he did meet, and so he was a very engaging, nice baby. The main problem with him is that he would sort of smack or sort of lash out a little bit. He didn't listen to me, even from a young baby, but his physical ability was just phenomenal. You know, he was walking already at 9 months. It was always socially that he didn't seem to pick up quite how he should be behaving. I remember one incident when he was a baby, so he was about 18 months before his second birthday, and he was playing with toy blocks, and he threw one at me, and I said, don't throw them, it hurts. And he just looked at me and he picked one up again and he threw it, and it hit me right here. And I said, no, Miles, don't do it, don't throw. And he picked up another one and just threw it at me. And so I said, well, if you do that again, I'm going to smack your hand. But he picked it up and he threw it at me, and so I had to smack his hand. I said I would, and I smacked it as, hard. And he just didn't tremble, didn't show anything. He just picked up another block, threw it at me in the same place, and then without saying anything, just held out the other hand for a smack. And so you just went, whoa.
Tracy came to the UK from South Africa in 1997. She was working as a nanny and waitress in London when she met Miles's dad. Aged 20, she became pregnant with Miles.
He was in the forces, so he was in barracks. I was a live-in nanny again. So we didn't have a place of our own. So the solution was to get married. Hindsight is a great thing, but we probably shouldn't have done. We weren't in love. We weren't a good couple in that sense. I realised it about 3 or 4 years ago that actually I didn't embrace being a mother. I looked at my own child almost as though he was somebody else's that I was looking after.
From the age of 6, during the breakdown of his parents' marriage, Miles's behaviour became increasingly aggressive and disruptive. He began running away from school and arguing with his mum at home.
I think I got stuck in a spiral of almost competition, so this battle of wills. And I think I forgot to just accept him the way he was. Around this time, there was one incident when he had cut himself with a knife, a crafting knife that he was using for his warhammers, for his model making. I wasn't aware of it at all at the time. The cuts on his arms had been discovered at school.
The number of children self-harming in Britain is believed to have doubled in the last decade. There are 30,000 young people admitted to hospital each year for deliberately hurting themselves.
Well, we know that it goes across all social classes, it goes across all cultures, it's not just one set of young people that are doing this. It tends to be associated with issues around self-esteem, having low self-esteem.
Children are insufficiently educated at school about mental well-being. There is nothing in the national curriculum about mental health specifically.
Do your teachers talk to you about, mental health?
Nope.
In personal development, what do you do in personal development?
Solvent abuse.
Solvent abuse?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Like glue sniffing?
Yeah.
People get a little afraid thinking that when you talk about mental health, you're talking about mental illness, and they don't want to open that kind of worm, so let's not go there.
At school, they teach you about solvent abuse?
Yes.
Right.
In PD, they try and make us not do drugs. But I didn't know about solvent abuse before.
No, that's what I was
did the
thinking.
PD. So I was like, well, now I know about it. I'm more likely to do it than I was when I was not knowing about it. So technically, the school aren't very clever. And they tried to make us
It's now thought that up to 1 in 12 children in the UK have deliberately hurt themselves at some point.
There were 3 incidents where he tried to hurt himself. He cut his arm on the top of his arm. That once. Then after that, he took the strap from his school bag and tried to hang himself from a tree at school. Miles said that he didn't feel any pain when he did it the first time, and that it was sort of almost done in a trance or something like that.
When social services and the NHS Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, or CAMS, were first offered as sources of support, Tracy was reluctant. She feared they would be coming in to judge her and potentially to take Miles away.
Miles had cut himself, but school didn't ring me and say we found these cuts on Miles's arms. They actually rang social services directly, and social services got in touch with me. When social services were first engaging with us, I think they really could do a lot more to reassure families that they're not looking to remove children from environments. But I had everything raked through. You know, how I trained my dog, what I was cooking for tea. You know, our whole lives, every stone was unturned, and I felt like every decision I made as a parent was being judged to be either right or wrong.
Battlefield 3,
Why?
because it's realistic.
What's realistic about it? What do you have to do in Battlefield 3?
Kill people.
Okay.
Or like blow up objectives or capture flags or kill people.
Miles doesn't see his father at all at the moment. They don't have a relationship. He chose not to see Miles anymore, and so it's difficult, but it's his decision, and I fought very hard for him not to make that decision.
Britain spends approximately 10% of the NHS budget on mental health care, and just under 1% of that amount goes to children and young people's mental health services.
When people talk about mental health, they think about adult mental health, because actually we know that half problems in adults start when you're a young person. But I think it becomes a natural focus for people when they talk about mental health. They think about adults, they don't think about children and young people.
The current government's mental health strategy emphasises the importance of young people's participation in developing their services. But 2 years after its launch, a survey in January by the leading charity Young Minds showed that almost 80% of local government health authorities who responded had yet to be told exactly how young people can get involved.
CAMS do have priorities. Their priorities really are about mental illness, so what things that can be defined as mental illness, and about life-threatening problems.
But self-harm is not a mental illness in itself, and it is not usually life-threatening, which is why an unknown number of young people never get as far as treatment.
Do you know of anybody else who
Yes.
self-harms at
Yes,
school?
Yes.
How old are they?
No information shall be given.
Reforms to the NHS have meant that half of local authorities cut their funding to child and adolescent mental health services in 2011 to 2012, some by up to 30%. More cuts to important frontline and early intervention services are expected this year.
We've had a more recent episode of him self-harming again, and he has put a lot more series of cuts on his arm. And he's done that 3 or 4 times. It was almost that he wanted people to know that he was doing it. And they were very shallow cuts, but he then did it up both of his arms. So his arms were quite scary to look at. And then would walk around in a short sleeve top at a scout camp. Recently, he found it by buying like 20 pence sharpeners at school and breaking the sharpener and using the blade from that. So you can't. If he's going to hurt himself, I can't stop him from doing it. It's very hard to look after him, treat him normally under this cloud of suspicion, constant suspicion that he will hurt himself. So I have to trust him. I have to, and we talked about it this recent episode. He sort of gave me a handful of his sharpeners and said, well, take them away. And I actually gave them back. And I just said, just don't do it.
In March this year, after a renewed spate of self-cutting, Miles threw himself into the River Ouse near his home.
He said that he was going to get in the river. It's quite a fast-flowing river. And if the river took him away, he wasn't going to resist. Oh, I really don't want to be afraid. I really don't want to invite that onto us. We've been afraid for so long. You know, it was just the fear of those few years was just so overwhelming, and it permeates the whole of your life. And I don't want to be afraid. You know, for us anymore. So I just try not to be. You know, I don't want to. I want to only think of a really great teenager who gets to fulfill his potential and have great friendships and a good time at school and a good childhood. He doesn't have much of a childhood left. And a lot of it, you know, we've had good moments, but a lot of it has been really tough. And I just don't want that anymore. And so I don't want to be afraid of what might come up. I now know there is support there, and if we have to go through it again, we can and we will. But I don't want to even contemplate that we will have to, because I would prefer a great teenage year for him.
What will help you get through it if things get difficult?
I don't know.
What does Mum think?
I don't know. I'm not telepathic. Telekinetics.
I think every situation is different, but we need to keep talking, and I need to keep remembering, you know, to make sure Miles feels, you know, supported, and that, you know, he's got boundaries.
If the current rate continues, it's estimated that by 2020 there will be 100,000 hospital admissions a year due to self-harm for children and young people.